So, picture the device you are listening to this on right now, whether it's a phone in your pocket or, a laptop on your desk. It relies on microscopic copper wires to move data around.
Right, which we completely take for granted.
Exactly. We totally take it for granted. But now I want you to imagine trying to build a machine like a supercomputer so unfathomably powerful and dense that the fundamental laws of physics governing those standard copper wires literally just start breaking down.
Yeah, you try to push so much data through that the physical metal simply gives out. The signal just dies.
And that is exactly the engineering crisis the tech world is staring down today. Welcome to today's deep dive. It is great to have you with us. Today, we are looking at a massive stack of highly technical sources to understand what is probably the single biggest architectural shift in AI infrastructure.
It really is a fascinating breaking point to witness because, we tend to view technological progress as this infinite smooth curve upward. But the reality of engineering is that eventually you hit a hard physical wall. Right. And when you hit that wall, you cannot just iterate. You have to completely reinvent the underlying architecture of how computers communicate with each other.
And looking at the landscape right now, today is May 14th, 2026, and we are seeing tech giants basically panic buying their way out of a massive physical bottleneck. And honestly, almost no one outside of Silicon Valley engineering labs is really talking about how they are doing it.
Which is why our mission today is to distill all this down. We're looking at a deeply researched IO fund analysis on Nvidia's new $4 billion optical strategy. We also have a highly technical engineering presentation from a semiconductor packaging leader called BC, an Nvidia technical blog on scaling their AI factories, and some very revealing investor chatter.
Yeah, including that leaked Goldman Sachs report.
Exactly, the Golden Report, and some recent analysis on a stock called FOCI.
So by the time we finish this deep dive, you are going to understand exactly what co-packaged optics, or CPO, actually is. We are going to explore why the industry is being violently forced to replace traditional wires with microscopic beams of light, the staggering nanometer-level precision required to actually build these things, and what this $150 billion market supercycle actually means for the future of the global power grid.
And if there's one central theme I want you to keep in mind as we go through this, it is the concept of shrinking the distance. Every single problem and every single solution we're going to discuss today really just comes down to the physical space between computing components.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can understand the hype around all these lasers and optics, we have to look at the existential crisis happening inside modern AI data centers.
The copper wall.
Right, the copper wall. It's like trying to blast a fire hose amount of water through a standard garden hose. I was looking at this staggering stat from the Bessie presentation. Modern AI compute power has exploded by 60,000 times recently. 60,000. It's unbelievable.
But the I/O bandwidth, the actual pipelines moving the data in and out of those chips, that has only grown 30 times.
And that huge disparity is exactly where the physics start to break down. To see how that bottleneck physically manifests, you just have to look at NVIDIA's current roadmap. They recently built the NVL72 architecture, which was, a massive achievement.
Yeah, packing 72 GPUs into one single server rack.
Right. But training the next generation of AI models requires exponentially more power. So they're moving to the Rubin Ultra NVL576.
Okay.
And this setup connects 8 entire racks together, so they act as a single, giant, unified GPU.
And to make 8 separate racks act like one continuous brain, they have to talk to each other at mind-boggling speeds. We are talking 200 gigabits per lane. But here's the problem with copper at those speeds. Like I said earlier, it's not a garden hose where you just crank up the pressure. It's more like trying to have a whispered conversation across a crowded, noisy stadium.
That's a perfect way to visualize it. Over a few inches, that whisper is perfectly clear. But try to send that whisper across several meters of copper at 200 gigabits a second, and the electrical resistance and noise just completely swallow the signal.
Yeah, the physics of high-speed bandwidth dictate that at 200 gigabits, an electrical signal traveling over standard copper cables, what the industry calls active electrical cables, or AECs, can really only stretch about 3 meters before the signal integrity just falls apart entirely.
It just turns to static.
Exactly. The data essentially turns to static.
But wait, if an NVL576 pod is 8 racks wide, That physical footprint has to be what, almost 5 meters across?
It is nearly 5 meters wide, yes.
So the copper literally cannot reach. You physically cannot connect the left side of the brain to the right side of the brain using copper because the signal dies before it even gets there.
And that is the geographic wall. Copper has reached its absolute physical distance limit within the data center layout.
See, if you are listening to this and wondering, well, why don't they just use standard internet fiber optic cables to bridge that gap? I had the exact same thought. I mean, we have had fiber optics connecting continents across the bottoms of oceans for decades. Why do we need a brand new architectural paradigm called co-packaged optics? Like, why reinvent the wheel here?
It is the most logical question to ask. And it's true. Traditional fiber optics, using what the industry calls pluggable transceivers, absolutely solve the distance problem.
Oh.
You can shoot data across kilometers of glass with zero signal degradation.
Right.
But inside an AI data center, traditional pluggables create a massive crippling power and efficiency problem. It all goes back to that theme of shrinking the distance.
So walk us through the journey of the data in a traditional pluggable setup.
Sure. Think about the physical route an electrical signal has to take. It starts inside the main processor chip, right? To get to the optical cable, those electrons have to travel out of the chip all the way across the printed circuit board, fighting through the physical resistance of the board materials through various physical connectors, just to reach an external transceiver module that sits on the very edge of the server rack.
And that physical commute is the problem.
Yes. That physical journey across the board results in a devastating 22 decibels of signal loss.
22 decibels. That is a huge amount of data just evaporating as heat before it even reaches the laser.
And because the signal degrades so heavily just crossing the circuit board, engineers have to install these incredibly power-hungry chips called digital signal processors, or DSPs. You can think of DSPs as translators shouting to each other to clean up and amplify the degraded signal before it can finally be converted into light.
And shouting takes energy?
A lot of energy.
Huh.
Those DSPs draw up to 30 watts of power per single interface.
Wow.
Yeah, and when you multiply 30 watts by the tens of thousands of connections required in a modern AI factory, the power consumption becomes catastrophic. You are burning massive amounts of electricity just moving the data to the edge of the board.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this sets up the breakthrough of CPO perfectly. The Nvidia technical blog breaks down how co-packaged optics completely changes the physical geography of the hardware. Instead of sending the electrical signal all the way across the circuit board to a pluggable module on the edge, CPO takes the optical engine, the actual microscopic lasers, and embeds them directly onto the same physical package as the main switch ASIC.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, the ASIC is the application-specific integrated circuit.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the customized central brain of the network switch.
Right. So you are putting the laser immediately next to the brain. You are shrinking the distance to almost zero. And by eliminating that whole commute across the circuit board, the signal loss plummets from that devastating 22 decibels down to just 4 decibels.
Exactly.
And because the signal is so loud and clear right from the start, you don't need those power-hungry DSP chips shouting to amplify it anymore. The power drop is massive. It goes from 30 watts down to as low as 9 watts per interface.
And when you scale that 21-watt saving across an entire data center, you start to see why this is so revolutionary. By integrating the optics directly onto the switch package, NVIDIA's design delivers up to 3.5 times better overall power efficiency.
Wait, if you were pulling out the external transceivers, the bulky DSPs, and all that extra circuit board wiring, the resiliency of the system must go through the roof, right? Just by virtue of having fewer physical things that can break.
You are hitting on a major secondary benefit there. The data actually shows a 10 times higher resiliency because you are eliminating so many discrete separate components and failure-prone external connections. And NVIDIA is rolling this out aggressively. Their new Spectrum-X Ethernet switches are utilizing this technology to achieve an unbelievable 409.6 terabits per second of bandwidth across 512 ports.
Just to put 400.6 terabits per second into perspective, that is roughly the equivalent of downloading the entire global Netflix library in a fraction of a single second. It's insane. And they are also bringing this to their Quantum-X InfiniBand switches by late 2026.
The theoretical design is brilliant. Shrink the distance, save the power, boost the speed.
But practically speaking, the manufacturing of this sounds impossible. I mean, we're talking about literally fusing tiny, fragile glass lasers to silicon computer chips. How do you actually mass produce something like that without breaking the glass or melting the silicon or messing up the microscopic signal paths?
That right there is the multi-billion-dollar manufacturing hurdle, and it brings us right to the Bessie presentation. Bessie is pioneering a technique called hybrid bonding, specifically utilizing a process from TSMC known as SOI-ing face-to-face technology.
Wait, so I.
Yeah, system on integrated chips.
Okay, got it. But face-to-face technology sounds like they're literally just mashing two different chips together.
Well, it is essentially microscopic 3D stacking. In traditional electronics, you connect components using tiny solder bumps or wire bonds.
Yeah.
But at these speeds, even a microscopic wire creates too much distance and electrical resistance.
Oh, because of the distance thing again?
Exactly.
Oh.
So with hybrid bonding, they are fusing the silicon photonics engine directly to the electronic integrated circuit at a submicron level.
Mhm.
They align copper pads on both chips so perfectly that when they are pressed together, the copper actually fuses into a single solid piece at room temperature, while the surrounding silicon dioxide permanently bonds them together.
The precision required for that it's difficult to even conceptualize. I was reading about the specific machine BASE makes to do this, the 8800 Chimio Ultra Plus AC. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel, but it's a real manufacturing robot operating today.
It is.
Right now, it operates with a 100 nanometer accuracy. And to give you a sense of scale, a single human hair is about 80,000 to 100,000 nanometers wide. So we are talking about aligning glass and silicon at a fraction of a hair's width. And Bessie is moving to 50 nanometer accuracy this year in 2026 and actively developing 25 nanometer technology.
Just think about the physical environment required to pull off a 50-nanometer bond.
Yeah.
You need clean rooms that are hundreds of times purer than a surgical operating theater.
Wow.
A single speck of microscopic dust would act like a massive boulder between these chips, totally ruining the connection. You have to account for the tiniest ambient vibrations in the building. You even have to manage the thermal expansion of the materials.
Because glass and silicon expand differently when they get hot.
Precisely. If the temperature fluctuates even slightly during bonding, the materials shift by a few nanometers, and the entire multi-thousand-dollar chip is instantly garbage.
But when they get it right, that direct fusion is what unlocks greater than 100 gigahertz of bandwidth. According to the Bessie data, this direct connection delivers a 170% speed increase at the exact same power draw as older methods. And Broadcom's network switches are already utilizing up to 36 of these hybrid bonded CPO chiplets on a single device.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this extreme manufacturing difficulty has completely reshaped the industry hierarchy. The tech world is increasingly viewing these packaging companies, the ones that have actually mastered submicron die attach, like Bessie, as the true gatekeepers of the AI revolution.
Because they hold the keys to the physical build.
Right. You can design the greatest, fastest AI chip in the history of the world on a whiteboard, but if you do not have the physical machines capable of hybrid bonding the optics at a 50-nanometer scale, your chip is a paperweight. It will literally never make it out of the factory.
So to recap, we have a physical geographic wall with copper failing at 5 meters. We have a brilliant optical solution that shrinks the electrical distance to 0. And we have these massive sci-fi machines operating at the nanometer level to physically build them. So what does this all mean?
It means a massive financial shift.
Exactly. When you zoom out and look at the financial ecosystem shifting around this, it is staggering. Let's look at that leaked Goldman Sachs Reddit post.
The market's supercycle projections we are seeing there are unprecedented, even by Silicon Valley standards.
Yeah, Goldman Sachs is projecting a 900% growth in the AI optical networking market. They expect it to reach $154 billion by 2028.
Wow.
And out of that pie, co-packaged optics alone is expected to contribute $91 billion. That is why there is wild chatter around stocks like FOCI. Investors are calling it one of the most undervalued CPO players right now at a $3 billion market cap. The expectation is that they will capture dominant market share assembling these units for Nvidia and TSMC by 2027 and 2028.
And you can see the titans of the industry violently pivoting their capital to secure their place in this new ecosystem. Look at Nvidia's recent moves. They realized they cannot just design the silicon logic chips anymore. They just strategically invested $4 billion, that's $2 billion each, into two optical companies, Coherent and Lumentum.
Wait, they are dropping $4 billion just to guarantee they have lasers when they need them?
Yes. They understand that whoever controls the supply of lasers controls the pace of the AI rollout. Meanwhile, Corning, the company that literally invented low-lock optical fiber, is completely restructuring their business to prepare for CPO.
Right.
Because co-packaged optics allows for incredibly dense arrays of connections, Corning expects new AI racks to require tens of thousands of fibers per rack. They view this shift as a $6 to $9 billion incremental opportunity just for their specific glass fiber products. And Marvell is publicly projecting $1 billion in CPO revenue by late 2029.
Underneath all these massive revenue numbers, though, the Goldman report highlights a fundamental shift in the actual materials being used. Something called silicon photonics, or SiPh, is rapidly stealing market share from traditional lasers. They project silicon photonics penetration will grow from just 6% in early 2024 to an incredible 46% by the end of 2028. Why the sudden dominance over traditional lasers?
Well, it really comes down to manufacturing economics. Traditional optical modules use discrete, exotic lasers that have to be individually aligned and assembled. It's tedious. Silicon photonics changes the game entirely by using standard silicon manufacturing plants, the exact same factories that print standard computer chips, to print optical components directly onto the silicon.
Oh, so you are taking advantage of the massive economies of scale that already exist in silicon manufacturing. That's smart.
Exactly. The report notes that a silicon photonics-based 1.6 terabit module has a 32% lower bill of materials cost than the traditional alternative. That is a massive margin boost, which is generating significant buzz around supply chain companies that specialize in these materials, like Lightwave Logic.
But wait, silicon photonics can't actually generate the light itself, right? Silicon is great for routing light, but you still need an actual light source.
That is a crucial distinction, and it actually brings us to a major supply chain reality check. Silicon is an indirect bandgap semiconductor, which is just a highly technical way of saying it's terrible at emitting light. To actually generate the laser beam, you need a highly specialized material called indium phosphide, or ENP.
And the Goldman report explicitly calls out indium phosphide as a massive bottleneck.
Yeah, it is a rare, complex compound to grow in lab environments, and the yields can be really challenging. Because NNP is the absolute foundation for these high-speed lasers, Goldman expects supply to remain incredibly tight until late 2028. The transition to a fully co-packaged optical world is not going to happen overnight, simply because the raw materials literally do not exist in high enough quantities yet.
So because of that material bottleneck, traditional pluggable optical modules aren't going entirely extinct anytime soon.
Far from it. The pluggable market is still forecast to grow 10 times in absolute terms. Pluggables will still be heavily relied upon in scale-out applications where operational flexibility is key. Think about a standard data center technician. If a laser burns out in a pluggable module, they can walk up to the rack, pull it out, and swap a new one in seconds. You cannot easily do that when the laser is permanently, molecularly bonded to the main switch chip via CPO. If a CPO laser dies, it is a much more complex replacement. Both Nvidia and Broadcom have explicitly stated they are going to squeeze every last drop of utility out of traditional copper and pluggables for smaller in-rack configurations before forcing customers to adopt full CPO setups.
Man, this has been an incredibly dense, fascinating journey. Let's pull all these threads together for you. We started with the sheer physical limitations of copper wire. It basically acts as a geographic wall, unable to span the 5-meter width of Nvidia's massive new NVL576 AI pods without the signal degrading into complete noise. And that limitation forced the industry toward an optical alternative. But traditional pluggable optics burn way too much power and like 22 decibels of signal just fighting your way across the physical circuit board.
Which birthed the absolute necessity of shrinking the distance down to zero.
Co-packaged optics. This microscopic marvel that requires insane 50-nanometer manufacturing precision in ultra-pure clean rooms to literally fuse glass to silicon. And that singular engineering breakthrough is currently fueling a $154 billion market supercycle, with tech giants throwing billions at laser companies and fiber manufacturers just to secure their supply chains. So the next time you hear a news report about a massive new AI supercomputer coming online, you will know that the real magic, the real limiting factor, isn't just the logic chips themselves. It is the microscopic light connecting them.
It is really a masterclass in how solving one engineering bottleneck immediately reveals the next one. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final deeply provocative insight that is buried in the IO Fund analysis.
Okay, what is it?
Well, we have spent this entire time talking about making AI faster, denser, and more efficient. But the consulting firm McKinsey recently released a stunning projection about what happens next. They predict that by 2030, AI inference, which is the actual daily use and execution of AI models by consumers and businesses, will completely overtake AI training.
Wait, really? So the daily application of the models becomes a bigger computational load than the massive effort required to build the models in the first place?
Yes, and this shift is being driven by what is called agentic AI. We are moving way beyond chatbots answering questions. Agentic AI refers to automated, autonomous AI workflows deeply embedded in massive enterprise environments.
Like what?
We are talking about AI autonomously executing high-frequency financial trading, managing real-time hospital patient logistics, or balancing regional power grids. In agentic AI, latency isn't just a luxury where a web page loads a millisecond faster. It is a literal life-or-death metric. To support this autonomous future, McKinsey projects AI inference will consume a massive 93 gigawatts of data center power demand globally by 2030, growing at a 35% compound annual growth rate.
93 gigawatts, just to ground that number for everyone listening. 93 gigawatts is roughly the equivalent power output of 93 average-sized nuclear reactors running at full capacity. That is staggering.
Which brings us to a chilling realization about everything we have discussed today. With agentic AI demanding 93 nuclear reactors worth of power in the next few years, the switch from power-hungry copper and pluggable optics to co-packaged optics, which, remember, drastically cuts power consumption from 30 watts down to 9 watts per port, isn't just a clever engineering trick to make AI network speeds a little faster.
Right.
It might be the absolute only physical thing preventing the entire AI revolution from literally running out of electricity.
Wow. So we really are back right where we started, but on a terrifyingly larger scale. We aren't just bumping up against the laws of physics regarding data speed and copper wire inside a server rack. We're bumping up against the physical limits of the global electrical grid itself. And it turns out the only way to keep the whole thing from going dark is to stop using wires entirely and start building with light. That is all the time we have for today. Keep diving deep, and we will see you next time.